Hello and welcome back. This is the fifth video in my series that compares the Crossbow Expert with the Warlock, and we are on the way to tier 2. Just to give you a short intro into what this series is about, I'm creating two characters and comparing them to see which one is better, and create some discussion about this topic. So please feel free to comment and subscribe and hit that notifications, so if you want to keep up to date with what's going on this channel. Anyway, that's enough of all that. Let's keep going. So basically at third level you get an otherworldly patron, and they bestow a gift upon you for your loyal service. Gee, what could go wrong with that? And that basically boils down to a choice. There's several to choose from, and it's pretty telling, I think, that there haven't been a great many of these created out of all of the extra books that have happened. And the reason is, I think, is that there's really good ones available, and there's some terrible ones or some not so good ones, but basically I think Pact of the Tomb is the best one, and that's what I chose. So we're going to choose some spells. We're going to get guidance because that adds versatility, and we're going to get a few extras that I've talked about before. But it's really just to round out the character and give it some versatility, because we're going to be using our eldritch blast most of the time. The comparison between the two classes so far, we've covered this before. Then brings on fourth level. Fourth level is sharpshooter, and the Warlock gets the ASI. So unfortunately the fighter needs some more armor if it wants to be competitive. The Warlock is more cost effective than the fighter, and that brings us to tier 2, levels 5 to 10. So the Crossbow Expert gets an extra attack at level 5, which is a bit of a boring dynamic, but it is in tune with what the fighter does, because the fighter's got to fight. They ignore loading, so this one shot per attack means that they're going to have 2 attacks as well as the bonus action attack. So that's 3 attacks per round. With action surge, they get all of that again, except for the bonus. But the damage is only piercing, and there's a lack of options when it comes to damage and the fighter. As I've mentioned before, when you're only doing piercing damage, it means basically if you're fighting skeletons or things, or a swarm or something like that, it's quite difficult to do decent damage, and it's easier to run out of options. Basically, this particular build can push or trip though, so that's something they can do. And I guess you could add poison, or maybe the DM gives you some sort of magical bolts. I'm not sure how you would go actually shooting burning bolts like you do burning arrows, flaming arrows. So that's the level 5 Crossbow Expert. Meanwhile, the Warlock has an extra eldritch invocation, and I chose Devil's Sight. The reason I like Devil's Sight is because it's better than Dark Vision, and that makes that first level feat that you get for being human even more delicious, because of all of the species that you could have been and would have got Dark Vision, makes no difference, because now with Devil's Sight you can see normally in darkness, both magical and not magical, for up to 120 feet. wonderful. So let's move on. At 6th level, the fighter gets a +2 dex, or I chose that. You can get a feat, but I just thought that pumping up the dex would be good. So the hand crossbow is now +9 to attack and doing 1d6 4 damage with those 3 attacks per round. It's actually not 4 with the action surge. It should be 4 plus the bonus for the action surge, and hit points of 52. However, the 6th level Warlock has a few extra things. At 45 hit points, Dark One's Own Luck. Starting at 6th level, you can call on your patron to alter the fate in your favor. So it's sort of like, gee, I don't know, super guidance. You can use this feature once per rest, so that's pretty needy. I don't think the clerics get something like that at this level with every short rest. That'll be interesting to see. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong about that. I think it's been glossed over, like I said before, that this comes at a price, and that is the Warlock Soul. It's kind of a bit ironic to me, because I went through the 80s when I had to convince my parents that D&D was not demon worship, and you know, even though they had these pictures of demons and stuff on the books, that's what we didn't do in games. It was just, you know, fighting with swords and things like that. And now we've got characters which literally sell their souls to the devil. I'm glad I don't have to explain that to my parents. It also doesn't really explain what happens if you break this pact. Is it possible to break the pact? How does that happen? What does it look like? The Warlock's damage includes piercing, bludgeoning, force, lightning, thunder, cold, and fire. And as I mentioned before, the fighter's only doing piercing damage. So the Warlock has options. Obviously, the eldritch blast is going to be its main attack, but it can deal out other forms of damage if there's some resistance that it's got to overcome. At 7th level, you get 2 Battle Master maneuvers. I chose Riposte, and that just gives you a chance to attack if somebody attacks you. However, it's only a melee attack, so it doesn't really help us, and that's the problem with Battle Master. There's not enough good stuff in there for ranged. I took Precision Attack, hope as a sort of balance to that. So my idea with the Riposte was, if it got to the chance where there was an enemy attacking in close range, that at least the Crossbow Expert could draw a sword and fight back. And the Precision Attack helps with the ranged crossbow attack. 7th level Warlock, Sculptor of Flesh. Once per long rest, you can use the Polymorph, a 1-hour polymorph, into any beast whose challenge rating is equal to or less than the target's, or the target's level if it doesn't have a challenge rating. That means the Warlock could polymorph the fighter into a great ape. This ape would have 157 hit points and armor class of 12, would be a huge creature with 10-foot reach, +9 to hit, 3d10 +6 bludgeoning damage, or it could throw a rock for 7d6 +6 bludgeoning damage. How does that compare with the Crossbow Expert is the fighter should just ask the Warlock to turn it into an ape for a while. The range is not that different. The minimum range is actually the same, but it was actually a bit better. Sorry. 76 bludgeoning damage. But that's the problem that fighters have. You know, magic just takes it to the next level, and that's why this fighter here's got a sad face. At 8th level though, the fighter takes the +2 dex and now has a dex of 20. So that's good, which means +10 to hit, +5 to damage, 68 hit points. I was feeling a bit sorry after that huge gorilla in the room, so I thought, well, okay, let's give the fighter half plate armor, and it so now has an AC of 17, and I think at 8th level it's reasonable to suggest that the fighter would have better armor than that, but because magic and magical armor, magical weapons and all that sort of stuff is really up to the DM, I didn't want to assume that a DM's going to be giving that out. So I've just gone through the actual progression of the character. Of course the DM will compensate, but the thing is, when you're DMing and you're giving out magical treasure, if you're only giving stuff out to the fighters or non-magicals, then the magicals will think that you're favoring them. So it's a balancing act, and you will have to give magical items to the spellcasters as well, and that's just part of the game. 8th level Warlock gets that +2 to charisma, so that their charisma is now 20. The eldritch blast is +8 to hit and does 1d10 +5 damage. Once again, that 240 range is still there. At this level I realized I hadn't been keeping a very good track of the spells, so I just sort of caught up a little bit. So we've got Remove Curse, Tongues, Wall of Fire, Fly, and Dimension Door. Well, doesn't that change everything? Tongues. So basically we don't need languages anymore. Remove Curse reduces the threat of any curses. Wall of Fire is a big damage spell. Fly. So if it's not good enough that the range is so high, 10 minutes of flight with a speed of 60, and once again all you have to do is fly up to as far as you can go and be within that range of 240 feet and just shoot down. And if they have a range of 240 feet, fly higher, drop down, which is instantaneous and requires no movement, shoot, and use your movement feet to fly back up out of range. It's that easy. So in open terrain, the Warlock is unbeatable, unless it's attacked by something else that can fly, or something else. Obviously there's spells and things like that that can get around it. It becomes another problem to deal with. But then we have Dimension Door, teleport 500 feet. Even if the Crossbow Expert dashes towards the Warlock, it's not going to be able to recover that much distance. Or the Warlock could just polymorph into a T-Rex, or maybe polymorph the fighter into a T-Rex. Why not? You can at this level. Anyway, you can see now that things are really starting to change for the Warlock, and the fighter is going to struggle. Not to say the fighter's bad, it's at close quarters. Once again, if it was trapped in the room, they couldn't escape, then the fighter would have the advantage from just the pure output. But at this level also, the Warlock might teleport out. Anyway, let me know what you think. What would you choose? Would you do any different out of these builds? I'm sure there are some ideas out there. Let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.